Well, hey everybody, thanks so much for tuning into this. I just wanted to pop online and do what we can to still try to connect with you, still try to provide some valuable content, some valuable resources as we all try to sort of navigate this COVID-19 coronavirus situation together. So wanted you to know you're not alone in this. The Chamber is here for you. And we certainly, even though we cannot meet face-to-face right now, we certainly value the struggles that you're facing, and we want to do whatever we can to help support you. So today we're going to take the Nexus at Noon session that was going to be face-to-face, and we're going to bring it to you virtually, and we're going to provide you with the same content and hopefully a certain level of interaction that we might have gotten face-to-face, and now we're going to get to do more virtually. So we are going to be looking at this book here, Never Split the Difference. So certainly if you do have a hard copy, disinfect it, pull it out, let's go through it. If you don't have a hard copy, you certainly can download the audio. I personally think the audio is quite awesome because the narrator is really cool, and it's not actually the author that narrates it. It's a guy who probably narrates crime novels, so it's really pretty cool to listen to, especially if you're working from home or if you are driving in the car. It's a great thing to pop in your ears and kind of listen to as you're kind of out and about, or at home if you're certainly quarantined. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to focus on the introduction, kind of really setting the stage for how this book came about, the way that negotiation was handled before these strategies and tactics came into play. And I think you guys all know, but the author is Chris Voss, and he comes from a place of about a little over 2 decades of experience as a FBI hostage negotiator. And so he makes it a very strong case for how the strategy and tactics that he has spent his entire career developing really can be applied to every area of our lives. Specifically, we're going to talk about what that looks like for business and what that looks like in the conversations that we have in our business, in our industry, whatever that may be. So it's really exciting. I'm very excited to kind of dive into the introduction today. Again, sort of setting the stage, setting the foundation, and then we are going to go ahead and build one wall. He equates this book or relates this book to building a house, and so we're going to have our foundation today, and then we're also going to build one wall, and we're going to start looking at one tactic that he talks a lot about in negotiation called mirroring, and how that works. We're going to have some examples of it, and certainly going to allow some time at the end of this session for questions. If you want to email questions over, we're going to do it the best we can to create some dialogue and to create some action around this information, even if we can't meet face to face. So that's kind of what we're in for today, and look forward to it. All right, let's get started now with setting up the new rules as our author would like us to understand it. As we begin this conversation, it's important for us to set a foundation, a mutual understanding of where we're starting this conversation. Essentially, a couple things that we need to know. Number one, life is a negotiation. It doesn't matter if you're talking to your spouse, your team, your child, your supervisor, a car salesman, whoever it is. Life is a series of negotiations. Where I think some of us get tripped up is perhaps on the way we define negotiation. So for the course of this conversation, the course of this entire program, we are operating on the understanding that negotiation is simply communication with results. It's not about twisting people's arms. It's not about browbeating people into making decisions they really aren't comfortable with. It's really just learning how to communicate to get results. The centerpiece of this entire conversation is actually something that the author talks about the FBI adopting, and spends quite a bit of time actually talking about how they got to the point of adopting this. Something that he calls tactical empathy. Really important, jot that down somewhere. The centerpiece of this entire conversation really is on tactical empathy. Essentially what that tactical empathy does is it addresses two of our primal urges, which are the need to feel safe and secure and the need to feel in control. He circles back around to this concept every single chapter. So you're going to hear this over and over and over. So it's important to understand that is the centerpiece that we're sort of focusing our conversation on. It's important to understand that you don't necessarily have to like negotiation in order to make it work. You don't necessarily have to wake up excited about the types of negotiations you're going to enter into today. What you do need to understand is you need to understand how it works. I think once we develop that understanding together, some of us might actually wake up a little more excited to negotiate our way through the day. A key point that I really liked that the author talked about was that we get what we ask for. So the key for us is learning how to ask correctly. I think that's really important and definitely something we're going to spend some time developing in these sessions together. And most importantly, you guys know I am a realist and I choose content because it makes sense in the real world. And so I'm very happy to report that the author is very proud to talk about the fact that this process that he's developed and is going to lay out so beautifully, so practically, so straightforward with us, it works because it was designed in the real world and it was designed for the real world. Now, the great thing is, most of us, hopefully none of us, will ever be in an FBI hostage negotiator role where people's lives are on the line. However, what we are going to realize is that these tactics and strategies can be used in so many different interactions, and we're going to walk through examples. Every single session together, there will be at least one example of how this works in the real world, and then certainly giving you some time to think about how it works in your world as well. The goal is to be prepared to listen. Think about that for just a second. The author says the good negotiators know they have to be ready for possible surprises. Great negotiators aim to use their skills to reveal the surprise they are certain exists. So it's really important to understand that you have to anticipate the surprises. Know that they're there, know that they're going to come up, and be ready to work your way through those. The most important thing in preparation is to go in with hypotheses, not assumptions. The author likes to say that assumptions blind, but hypotheses guide. So the key is start with several possible reasons and you use some listening techniques, and we're going to get to some of those techniques in just a minute, to get to the real issue. So I think it's important right now to sort of pause and talk about a couple of barriers to active listening. So we've already heard from the author how important it is to be an active listener, but a lot of times maybe we aren't sure what barriers are in place that are preventing that from happening. So a couple of them. Number one, we are just easily distracted people. Humans just in general, we're so easily distracted. We think we have a good attention span, even if we work really hard on it, and chances are it's probably still not that great. So we're easily distracted. That's a huge barrier to active listening. Number two, we engage in selective listening. We only hear what we want to hear or what aligns with the perceptions that we have on what the real situation is. So we're going to hear things that align with what we're saying in our head, and we're not really listening to what the other person is saying. Number three, we're also easily overwhelmed. Research indicates that we really can only process about 7 pieces of information at any given time. The best way to combat these barriers is really to make the sole focus the other person and really listening to what they have to say, finding out what they are feeling, finding out what needs they have. Is it a monetary need? Is it a time need? Is it an emotional need? Those all will come out if we truly make the sole focus of the early part of a conversation the other person. Don't worry at the beginning of a conversation, don't worry about what your position is. Don't worry about the right time to put that in. That will come naturally as the conversation progresses. Don't focus on that. Instead, shift your focus to the other person and listening to what they have to say. You'll be surprised what they will reveal to you about what's really going on if you just stop and listen. The other thing, this goes back to the first slide where we talked about a primal urge is this urge to feel safe and secure. And when our sole focus in a conversation is the other person, that is a fantastic way to make them feel safe, and the voices in their head are going to begin to calm down. They're going to slow down, they're going to stop and really process through what they're trying to say, because they're seeing you pay such laser-like focus to what it is that they're saying. Another very important component of communication is the tone of your voice. And it's really important to slow things down, use the appropriate tone of voice, and don't forget to smile. Especially if you are in a phone conversation with someone, or in today's day and age where we're doing virtual meetings, smiling is very important. When you smile, it leads to mental agility, believe it or not. It helps you think more clearly, it helps you think more precisely about what it is that you're trying to say and how you're trying to say it. Also, slow down. Going fast, trying to hurry through a conversation really makes people feel as though you have no interest in hearing what they have to say, and that will absolutely undermine any trust and rapport that you are working to establish. And as you're going to find in negotiation, that trust and rapport makes all the difference. That's how you get to the desired result that you're seeking. So if you are rushing through that, you're undermining it, and it's really not going to give you the results that you're looking for. So smile, slow it down, and third, consider the tone of voice that you're using. Essentially, all of us have about 3 different tones of our voice that we have access to. It's important for us to know when to utilize each one. So the late night DJ tone really is something that you want to use selectively to make a point. The key is being calm, taking your time, inflecting your voice downward. This indicates that you are taking control of a situation and that things are not up for negotiation at that point. So when you really need to make a very powerful point, you need to keep in mind you need to be using the late night DJ voice. The second tone of voice we have access to is our default voice. That's what most of us talk in all the time. I don't know that all of you would describe your default voice as positive and playful, but that's certainly the way that the author would describe it here. Basically, it's what you talk in all the time. You're easygoing, you're relaxed, conversation that you would have with the person you enjoy talking to the most. So keep in mind that this can be incredibly effective. It makes you, certainly in a conversation, it makes you seem, open and comfortable and friendly and welcoming and open to however the conversation progresses. And so keep in mind that's really the one that you should use most of the time. The third tone would be our directive or assertive tone. And this really, if you're a parent, you all know we have a parent voice that comes out every once in a while. If you're a supervisor, you know that you have a boss voice that comes out every once in a while. And I say every once in a while because really this should be used very sparingly. In order to have the most productive communications with the people that you interact with, you really do not want to use this direct or assertive tone very often. That is going to prohibit you from having the kinds of outcomes that you really want in your conversations. So keep that in mind. You have 3 to choose from all the time, and keep in mind that your situation is going to dictate which tone of voice you should be using. Okay, now we're going to get into our first tactic, and that is what the author calls the mirroring tactic, or basically how to be a mirror in a conversation. So it's going to sound incredibly simple, but as you begin to practice this, you'll realize it's not quite as easy as it sounds. Good news is we have an example to work through together, so that's awesome. So essentially, mirroring is just imitating. But it's not imitating, if you have siblings or you've seen your kids do this, it's not imitating to be insulting or to frustrate. It's imitating to seek greater understanding. So essentially what you do is you repeat the last 3 words or the most critical words of what someone has just said to you. It's important that you deliver that with an inquisitive tone. Again, you want to seek to understand. You want to seek for them, you're asking them to provide you greater detail, for them to kind of expand upon what it is that they said, for them to clarify what it is they meant by what they said. So, I told you there was an example. If you're following along, in the book on page 45 is where you're going to find this workplace example. So I'm just going to read basically what the author has to say here. So here's the real world example. One of my students experienced the effectiveness of this simple process at her workplace, where her impulsive boss was known for his drive-bys, an infuriating practice by which the boss would suddenly swing by one's office or cubicle unannounced with an urgent, poorly thought-out assignment that created a lot of unnecessary work. Past attempts at any kind of debate created immediate pushback. "There's a better way" was always interpreted by this boss as the lazy way. Such a drive-by occurred toward the end of a long consulting engagement, one that had generated literally thousands of documents. The boss, still skeptical of anything digital, wanted the security of paper copies. Popping his head into her office, the boss said, "Let's make 2 copies of all the paperwork." "I'm sorry, 2 copies?" she mirrored in her response, remembering not only the DJ voice, but to deliver the mirror in an inquisitive tone. The intention behind most mirrors should be, "Please, help me understand." Every time you mirror someone, they will reword what they've said. They will never say it exactly the same way they said it the first time. Ask someone, "What do you mean by that?" and you're likely to incite irritation or defensiveness. A mirror, however, will get you the clarity you want while signaling respect and concern for what the other person is saying. "Yes," her boss responded, "one for us and one for the customer." "I'm sorry, so you're saying that the client is asking for a copy and we need a copy for internal use?" "Actually, I'll check with the client. They haven't asked for anything, but I definitely want a copy. That's just how I do business." "Absolutely," she responded. "Thanks for checking with the customer. Where would you like to store the in-house copy? There's no more space in the file room here." "It's fine, you can store it anywhere," he said, slightly perturbed now. "Anywhere?" she mirrored again with calm concern. When another person's tone of voice or body language is inconsistent with the words, a good mirror can be particularly useful. In this case, it caused her boss to take a nice, long pause, something he did not do often. My student sat silent. "As a matter of fact, you can put them in my office," he said, with more composure than he had had the entire conversation. "I'll get the new assistant to print it for me after the project is done. For now, just create 2 digital backups." A day later, her boss emailed and wrote simply, "The 2 digital backups will be fine." Not long after, I received an ecstatic email from this student. I was shocked. "I love mirrors. A week of work avoided." Mirroring will make you feel awkward as heck when you first try it. That's the only bad part about it. The technique takes a little practice. Once you get the hang of it, though, it'll be a conversational Swiss Army knife, valuable in just about every professional and social setting. So as you can see, this mirroring process is incredibly effective. So our last point today really is the key takeaway. You know that I'm all about key takeaways in our time together. So the key takeaway really is how to confront without confrontation. And the easiest way to do that is by using the mirror process. So here's a quick recap of what that mirror process is. 1, you've got to use your late night DJ tone. Start your sentences with "I'm sorry," again, to earn the benefit of the doubt. 3, mirror the last 3 words or selected words, most critical. Number 4, be silent for at least 4 seconds to let the mirror work its magic. You've got to give your counterpart time to actually process and rephrase and hopefully expound upon what it is that they were talking about. Finally, repeat. So this is really the process that I kind of just described in the example that we worked through in the workplace. So what I want you to do is really think about the types of conversations that you engage with on a daily basis. Think about conversations you have with clients, potential clients. Think about conversations you have with colleagues. Think about conversations you have with your supervisor. And really think about how you could use this process to make those conversations more effective. This mirror process is also outlined on page 44 of the book, so you can sit down with someone, a trusted friend, a trusted colleague, and practice. It will feel awkward at first, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to get with it, and the more effective that you are going to see this become in your conversations. Next, we're going to talk about labeling and mastering the no, and I will tell you these are 2 of my favorite tactics and definitely things that I have seen be very effective, and they got me really excited. So I can't wait for us to either talk about that in person on April 21st or have another session like this. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today, watching this video, and get to practicing your mirrors, and we will connect again soon. Thanks, guys. As a quick wrap up, if you have any questions about this content or you would like additional resources, please feel free to reach out. If there were things in the first 2 chapters that really stood out to you, please email me those. I'm going to definitely be building this resource out for as long as we need to be virtual. And so any feedback that you have, any ideas, things that you want to share, please shoot me an email and I would love to get those incorporated into this content.